IVM.
This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape on the IVM Podcast Network. You're listening to Vineet Kanabar. Every episode on this podcast is about some facet of entertainment that we consume in the 21st century, right? The idea is to give you a behind-the-scenes view on what really goes on behind the scenes when people are putting together large entertainment or sports products for people to consume. Today on this episode, I am very, very excited to be joined by. For engineers, this concept is familiar by my room beta from college, but now Chief Business Officer at Sportz Interactive, Siddharth Raman, general all-round sports guy, and generally really, really smart guy. Hi, Siddharth. Good to have you here.
Hey, Vineet. Thanks for having me.
Like I said, I wanted to bring you in to talk about how the connected sports fan experience is being built today in the third decade of the 21st century. The far-flung sort of fantasies of touchscreens and all of that is a reality now. Sports consumption has come a long, long way, and I thought there would be no one better than you to come in and give us a sense of what's going on. Now, let me set this up for you before we go into your introduction. Right? I mean, according to me, the priorities of human life are very clear, right? It is super clear. In the middle of a pandemic, right, like a year into a pandemic, we are still figuring out medical response, still figuring out how to help people. But we have figured out one thing for sure. We figured out how to get live sports back on, right? Priorities are super clear. Would you agree that that's collectively we've realized that our priority is watching live sports?
Couldn't agree more.
Right? Absolutely. I mean, it's a provocative thing to say, but it does seem like it, right? And in that space, Sportz Interactive is doing some really, really interesting work, right? So I want to get you started by telling us about Sportz Interactive, and the kind of stuff you're doing this IPL.
Oh, thanks, Vineet. I'll start with a quick introduction about myself, and you already laid context by the engineering reference. I'm from the breed of engineers who's grateful for engineering because it made me realize what I didn't want to do in life.
Absolutely.
It set me on a path to figure out a way to work in sport. I've been a failed sports person trying to find a way to work in the industry, and I've tried my hands at multiple different things from, sports journalism, sports writing. And this was where in the mid 2000s when blogs were big, I thought I could become the next big Siddharth Monga or Siddharth Vardarajan, Siddharth Ravindran, all those Siddharths over there. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I'm a failed sports writer as well. And I decided, then I came across this thing called sports marketing and sports management in 2008 when the IPL came to India. And that piqued my interest. And I said, okay, let's try and see what we can do over here. And that led me to a journey through to a B school where obviously we know each other from Mica, and in Mica, I was the idiot who didn't sit for placements. I opted out of all companies, and I said I only want to work in sport, and figured out an internship and figured out a job in sport after that. And my journey in sport has taken me through multiple different facets of sports marketing. I worked for an IPL team. I've launched a new league. I've helped brands activate their sports sponsorships. I've helped brands launch new sports campaigns. And now I'm working in Sportz Interactive, which is a digital marketing agency in sport. And when I say digital, we operate across three broad pillars, which is data, technology, and content. And our singular vision is to revolutionize the sports fan experience. We are 450 selfish sports fans coming to work every day to make life better for people like us and us. So that in a nutshell is what Sportz Interactive does. We I think through this conversation I'll try and pepper in some examples of the kind of work that we do. But if anybody's listening to this, if you've ever asked Google or Siri or Alexa what the cricket score is, you'll be surprised to know it's actually being powered from an office in Goregaon in Mumbai.
That's fantastic, man. I don't think you need a credits deck after you say that, right? Like those हम ये करते हैं, ठीक है? आप लोग देख लो. But fantastic, man. Great intro, and a couple of things to pick on there before we talk more about the sports fan and IPL. Tell me this, right? No, wait. I'll hold that question for a second. You said you launched a league. What is that?
So I've been involved in. If football fans would have heard of this famous stroke infamous, depending on where you were, league called Premier Futsal.
Right.
which happened in 2016. Which
you brought Ryan Giggs down and all of those things,
Giggs,
right?
Scholes, Ronaldinho. They came down for a couple of weeks to India to play some pretty decent futsal. I actually was involved from the marketing side of it. The agency I worked at that time, we were marketing partners, BDB Mudra Group.
Right.
And I got a ringside view of what it takes to bring a league alive, right? From getting on board a broadcaster to bringing players, contracts, locking in venues, getting in things going over there, and then obviously delivering a broadcast quality experience when you manage the on-ground event as well. So that was a great learning experience, and an interesting anecdote over there with Ronaldinho, where he had come in on a Friday. And this was the opening weekend in Chennai, and he was playing for the Goa team at that point in time, if I remember it right. And this was 2016. So suddenly we got to know that he's actually been nominated by the Brazilian government as one of the ambassadors for the Rio 2016 Olympics, and he actually had to fly out in 2 days. So he played a couple of games. The last game was where he scored 5 goals in a packed stadium in Chennai, and that was fun to watch. But we also realized we actually hadn't shot anything with him, and we wanted to bank content, right, with him.
Right.
So we very haphazardly in the hotel booked a small meeting room, set up cameras, set up everything else, and we said, okay, let's shoot. And then we realized, hey, who's the director? We've done everything, but there is no director. So I put my hand up and said, okay, let's do this. And I remember talking to his brother and telling him, because he obviously doesn't speak English.
Right.
His brother was the interlocutor there, was telling him, let him look at the camera. This is what he has to say. And one of the members of his entourage also started going live on his Facebook page.
Right.
And there I was live on Ronaldinho's page, talking to him, telling him what needs to be done. And my phone is buzzing saying, my friends who are football fans, full disclosure, I'm not a big football fan, but I'm a sports fan.
Right.
So my close friends who know I'm a football fan, I'm getting some of the kindest expletives coming my way saying, what are you doing?
Yeah, man. I would have been one of those guys if I knew this was happening, man. That's insane, dude. That's a great story.
I mean,
grandkids for sure.
Correct. And since you're a United fan, I'll try and make you jealous a bit. I did play beach cricket with Scholes in Goa.
Insane, man.
So we did an interview and he wanted to play some cricket. So we arranged, stumps, bat and ball. And he's actually a very good medium pace bowler. And
he looks like it, right? It looks like sort of the Ben Holyoke medium pace sort of.
Yeah, very, very not pace is not his key, but I think solid line length. He'll stifle you if you stick to the crease. So and he's got his golf skills come handy in his batting as well.
Insane, man. Those are some great stories to kick us off. And I am a little jealous, you're right. But that's definitely part of working in sports, right? Especially when you're building experiences around top tier sport or top tier sports people. Which brings me to sort of my next sort of thing that I wanted to pick at from your intro is that you had I think everybody who has a sports marketing journey is sort of unconventional in its own way, sort of. But then there are different ways to get to it, right? There's another classmate of mine, Arun, who went let me get some experience and then went to college and then did that. Whereas you sort of seem to have opted for a more learn by doing approach, right? So what's your take on that, right? Sports marketing education, your experience compared to the other people who maybe work with you.
So yeah, I think you've made a good point there, right? My personal bias has been that given how new and how dynamic the industry is, and when I say new, I'm saying from an India perspective, the best way to learn is by doing, right? And this is something I learned in my first internship. When I was at B school, managed to get an internship with the Formula One team over there. And I still remember the first thing my boss told me on day one is sports marketing is all operations, right? You're going to learn each and every aspect of it if you're operationally involved from day one. And that's something that stuck with me, right? So I think the myth I'd like to bust up. Now, look, I started off with stories of Ronaldinho and Scholes, but that's like 5% of the time in sport, right? And 95% of where it's not easy, but as long as you're passionate about sport, you feel you're contributing to a much larger cause, and it makes it all worth it in the end, right? So I think it's important for anyone looking to build a career in sport to try and get as much exposure by working in the industry as much as possible, learn different aspects of it, and figure out what suits you best, right? Like the privilege I've had is learning about different aspects of what goes into delivering live sport and what it takes to build an entire sports marketing ecosystem. And I've based on what I've learned and what I like and what I am not necessarily too fond of, I've tried to find a niche for myself in the space to kind of go deeper into, right, and become somewhat of a subject matter expert in this. Right. So I like the analogy of a T skill set where you're a generalist, but you build in-depth expertise in one area.
Absolutely.
And for anybody looking to build a career in sport, I think you take that same to that same framework to what aspect of sports marketing you want to build a career in as well.
Absolutely. I think I happened to read a LinkedIn post on the Mica page or something yesterday or today, and the Myntra CEO Harish, he put out a simple, like, the gist of his talk or his conversation there was exactly this, right? Early in your career, no matter where you are, just get into it deep and dirty, get your hands dirty, get to know the people, get to know the processes, and then sort of move on to what you like personally, while you know the lay of the land, and I've got to know it. I've got to know it well. I mean, that's I think very close to what my learning with entertainment has been as well, right? Is that जब तक आप करोगे नहीं और समझ नहीं आएगा, जब तक आप जाके कन्विंस नहीं करोगे टैलेंट को जो होटल रूम में बैठा है पर प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में नीचे लोग रुके हैं, और आप जाके जब तक बात नहीं करोगे तो वहां पे all your strategy goes out the window, right?
Exactly. So just on that, just a couple of examples, since I gave the scores Ronaldinho examples, also give some real world examples on what it means, right? By exactly to your point of rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty. When I did and this is specifically for folks who come from pedigreed B schools and who think you're going to be sitting in an air-conditioned cabin thinking of the next big brand campaign 6 months after you graduated. If you're doing that, then something's terribly wrong.
I mean, the offices are air-conditioned. I don't think that's not a problem.
Not in the examples I'm going to give you.
Okay, fine.
So the first one was from my internship, and look, internships in B schools are anyway supposed to be, a good reality check for you.
Yeah.
I remember I had to carry 40 Formula One helmets up 7 floors because the building elevator was not working, and it had to be done urgently, and there was no one else to do it.
Wow.
So I think it's important, and I did it because it had to be done, right? Not grudgingly saying, "Oh, why should I be doing this?" I think that was one, and the other one is an example from my time at RCB. This was 2013, or still early days in digital marketing. This entire piece of content from the stadium going up in near real time on a team social media platform. We were experimenting with broadband in the stadium. Second game in, broadband in the stadium actually collapsed, and there was nothing we could do. We had an office over there to upload stuff in real time, but that wasn't helping at all, right? And if anyone who's lived in Bangalore, the Chinnaswamy Stadium is about 1.5 kilometers away from the UD Group headquarters, right, which is in the city. And I actually did about 4 rounds of stadium to office, go to office, connect to the internet, upload, come back, collect more, go back, upload, come back. And this was in my first year as a management trainee over there, right? And stuff like that gets recognized and noticed by people up the line as well, because it's important for them to know that you're in this because you love it, right? You're not in this for the paycheck. You're not in this for the recognition. Because look, anybody who thinks you're working for an IPL team, especially in those days when you were at RCB, you'd think you'd be sitting in the box next to Mr. Malia, sipping a beer and watching the game. The last thing you're going to do while you're working in sport, at least in early days, is actually watching the game. There's also another interesting thing that I learned early in my career, that for the first 5 years, if you're involved in live sport, the last thing you're ever going to be doing is actually watching the game.
That is, I think, one of the great ironies of being involved in something that you're doing, right? And smashing insights there into getting started with sports. I don't think there is a substitute for passion, and it's sold a lot, this whole thing. Oh, you got to be passionate and all that, but it sold a lot because it's true, right? There is no substitute for it, right? You can spend time with something, and some people say, no, you need 10,000 hours of doing something to be good at it. But it's not 10,000 hours. It's 10,000 hours where you're applying yourself.
Deliberate practice, yeah.
Deliberate practice, absolutely, right? It's not, I will stand at the nets and have a machine bowl at me for 10,000 hours and I'll just become Sachin, right? You've got to focus. Brilliant stuff. With that, let me bring you in. Let me bring this into your sort of technical domain, right? With the modern sports fan being, like we established at the beginning of this conversation, we know that the priorities of human life are the live sports experience, right? Now, with that, the modern sports fan then becomes the most valued, most sought after, and the most well-serviced, so to speak, consumer, right? How would you say this modern sports fan is different from what we had maybe 10 years ago, maybe 20 years ago? What are the shifts that you think are powering this? And I know smartphone and technology and all that are sort of table stakes, right? But that's happening for entertainment as well, etc., etc. But to my chat, just to take a reference to my chat with Vineet Karnik a few months ago, he said 2005, 2006, sports and movies were the same size as markets. Now sports is like 8 times the size of movies or 10 times the size of movies. What's driven that from a fan's perspective?
So that's an interesting question, and I'll actually try and answer that by referring to a framework from, say, 2 decades ago, and use that as we spoke about understanding the consumer, and when we were at MICA, we that's the first thing we learned, right? It's always about the consumer. So in this case, the sports fan. And the only piece of theory that I still refer to, and I still use that in my pitch decks and client workshops today, is something called the fan involvement ladder, which I don't know how many people know, but Philip Kotler has also written a book on marketing, sports marketing, right? The father of marketing, modern marketing, actually thought it relevant to write a separate book on sports marketing and the sports fan in particular. I'd highly recommend that book for anyone looking to get into sport. It's called The Elusive Fan. A lot of the examples there are heavily indexed on the West, right, in the US. But I think some of the theories and frameworks are there. As long as you've been keeping your eyes and ears open, you'll be able to relate a lot to that, right? So the fan involvement ladder is basically 7 stages of fandom, right? You start off as someone who's indifferent. That's the first level. The second is eyeballs, where you kind of got someone's piqued your interest and you say, okay, I can spend some time watching this. So you move to the eyeball level. From eyeball, you go to wallets. The wallets in the earlier stage in an earlier day would have been, hey, I actually want to pay and go and watch this live in the stadium. Yeah. But in today's parlance, wallets could also mean, hey, I'm putting $50 in my Dream 11 group. Let me see how much I can make out of this, right?
For sure.
Then from wallets, you move to your collectors. And this is something which is still not come that much to India, which is the entire merchandising culture. So every time a Premier League team launches a new jersey, get a new sponsor, they get a spike in jersey sales. Even someone like a UVA getting Ronaldo on one of the key drivers for them was merchandise sales. New jerseys they'd be able to sell on the back of that, right? So that's where you get your collectors. And from collectors, you get the attachers. And the attachers, what started, say, about a couple of decades ago with the Barmy Army, is now that is what we're seeing in India as well, where you travel across the globe to go and see your team, no matter where you're playing. You plan your holidays, you plan your life around that. And I'd like to believe I'm at that level. I've tried to ensure that I go and watch. Cricket is my favorite sport, and 2011 onwards, I've ensured I've watched at least one game.
So quickly checking there, like for me, as a United fan, I plan my life around United. I've never been to Old Trafford, obviously. I want to, but I'm trying to figure how that can happen. But I plan my life around it. Is there a sort of socially distant version of attachers as well?
That's an interesting one, because that's what you're going to start seeing now, right? Where a lot of rights holders are figuring out what's the best way to deliver a virtual experience, or something like that. And Formula One did that with the virtual paddock when they tied up with Zoom, where one of the key reasons for Formula One sponsors to come on board was the networking opportunity they would get and the exclusive hospitality experience. Absolutely. They tried to replicate that to a certain extent through the Zoom partnership. So I think it's still early days for that. I think it also, for some of the other rights holders, there could be an interesting AR or VR play as well, where you could actually recreate the entire stadium experience on your mobile phone. If you have a VR headset, you could actually go much deeper over there. there's an opportunity. Exactly, right? So for an attacher, that's probably what you might see in a post-COVID world for someone to get into that level of involvement. And then from the attachers, you have the last two, which are, I think, the rarest. Actually, yeah, if you the last one, I'll let you decide. But the second last is insiders, where you're such a big fan that the team knows you, the players know you, the superstars know you. And to my knowledge, I think there's only one insider in Indian cricket, and that's Sudhir Gautam, the only Indian fan who was allowed or called into the dressing room on 2nd April 2011 to hold the trophy and get his photo clicked with the Sachin and Dhoni. And Sudhir Gautam is a guy who's painted himself in the tricolour, has been traveling around on a cycle across the country for 15 years, as for Sachin. And then the last one is the ensnared. And I think ensnared, there are two categories here, right? There's one which is your typical football hooligans, but there are also those that for whom sport and the way their team performs actually has an adverse effect on their health. So there's urban legend. I don't know whether it's true or not, so full disclaimer, but it's a great story to tell and never let facts come in the way of a good story. But this gentleman in Mangalore apparently who got a heart attack when Javed Mianda hit the last ball 6 of Chetan Sharma in Sharjah, right? Those are the ensnared fans, and you wouldn't want people to necessarily go there. So from a sports fan perspective, I think as marketers, the idea is how do you move people from indifferent up to attachers, right? How do you move them up higher and higher up the ladder? And in India context, I think a lot of people are in the eyeballs category. But the challenge has been how do you move up to wallets? And again, this time around, I think eyeballs to wallets in this current state is Hotstar has gone completely behind a paywall this time, right, for the IPL. So it'll be interesting to see how many people are actually willing to pay to watch an entire season. So that's also wallets. Dream 11 and any daily fantasy which is pay to play is also wallets. And then the others, the attachers and the collectors are the ones where you can provide more exclusive experiences. Right. Through digital platforms. And it'll be interesting because it's all constantly evolving, right? So, like you rightly said, smartphone, internet, 4G, all of that is just are all just accelerating what we would have seen happening otherwise 3-4 years down the line.
Now, let me ask you this from a generational cohort perspective. Are you seeing, and again, I mean, it's hard to say Indian boomers and Indian millennials, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Generationally speaking. Yep. Are you witnessing a different behavior in this sort of funnel? Maybe millennials or boomers or Indian boomers are harder to push up to wallet while the Gen Z guys are much more involved that way. And the second thing that I wanted to also sort of related question is and I know it's a sad thing to talk about right now when we're all indoors, but the sort of pop culture, social viewing culture, would that also be in the wallet space, or would that go into attachers? Sort of related question, generational cohort and pop culture.
Yeah. So I'll start with the second part first. I think if you ask me, my opinion is it'll probably be wallets, right? Because you're willing to spend time and money and go out and watch something together, which you could have done at home otherwise without spending the same amount anyway. Right. I think in terms of the cohorts of fans, I'll actually flip it and look at it from the point of view of the fan and what they expect, right? Sure. Boomers have grown up watching a certain type of cricketer, a certain style of their cricket superstars with very limited access to what's actually has been going on in their lives, both professionally and personally. All you see is of them on the cricket field, or what you would have heard of them on radio commentary, right? And again, the generational, if I can give cricket examples, the generational references are someone like from a Gavaskar to the early 90s.
When Sandeep Patil was your superstar.
Exactly. Sandeep Patil came in a movie was a big thing, right? Yeah. Gavaskar made guest appearances in certain movies, those were big things. And then I think you came into the Tendulkar, the Dravid, Kumble, Ganguly era, where you got to know a little more about them beyond just the field, right? And I think it also coincided very well with the economic boom in the country. Right. And there's a lovely Harsha Bhogle quote that I remember he mentioned in his speech that Gavaskar and Tendulkar, the way they batted were representations of the Indian mindset and the economy at that time, right? Gavaskar batted like he was, saving up for a bank balance. Tendulkar batted like he was playing the stock markets. And I'll take it a step further. Kohli and his team are actually playing like they're VC and private equity investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that was a big aha moment for me as well, right? The way the players have evolved, and I think it's been fueled by what fans are expecting to see as well, right?
Right.
And the way that you would have seen you would have never seen a Tendulkar and Dravid go on a coffee with Karan and do what some of the current cricketers have ended up doing, right? And
Right.
the good part is the current cricketers have actually done that, learned, and still come back from where they were. And which is why I think the Rahuls and the Pandyas of the world are more representational of the current cohort of fans, which is your Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch you play on the field, man. That's fine. I'm expecting you to do well. That's par for the course. But I want to know more about your tattoos. What's your next Instagram story going to be like? What's your workout routine going to be like? And a very interesting data point that we have working with teams, right? The most viewed content from any of the teams and players this is non-live content I'm talking about, not in the field of play, is actually the players' gym workout sessions, right? Because
Right.
there's so much intrigue around how do these guys maintain such a how their body is a temple, how do they maintain themselves the way they are in spite of the hectic lifestyle that they have. So I think the reason that what I was trying to come to based on all of this was, I think that they're reflections of how the fans have also evolved. So your father, my father would have probably loved this, hearing about a Gavaskar beating down a bowling attack on the first day of a test match.
Right.
And that was a victory. Even if he scored 20 in 2 hours, in 2 hours, it didn't matter. Our generation grew up watching a Tendulkar, Dravid, and Ganguly taking off his shirt at Lords was like, yes, we won. I've been ko dikhadenge types. And I think for the generation after us, the fans are like, okay, I mean, I'm expecting to see you play well on the field anyway, but I want to know more of what's going on in your life. And I think the way the cricketers and the sports stars also have kind of built their presence and build their brands is reflective of that. So it's a chicken and egg story, if you ask me. I think one has fueled which has fueled the other will always be an open debate. But I think that's reflective of fan culture through the past 2 or 3 decades.
Well, I love the way you took us through it there, right? I think in that the Harsha quote that you've sort of paraphrased and added a bit to it sort of gives a great sense of how important or how important an expression of Indian middle class mentality, at least cricket is, right? Specifically, let me ask you to do the same thing that you just did with sports and fans with sports tech, right? There has been a progression of sports of proliferation of technology inside sports, right? And while football is struggling with VAR right now and other rules and everything, I think cricket has had a very sort of stable run with technology, right? Whether it's the first third umpire, whether it's Snicko, whether it's now DRS as well, while DRS had a rough start. Take us through this evolution, maybe with 3 or 4 of your sort of most pertinent sports tech interventions.
So, just one nuance I'd like to call out, and people should also know this, that when you talk about tech in sport, there are 2 aspects to it. Right? One is the performance aspect of it, which is related to players and the sport itself, the technical aspect of the sport itself, and the other is from a fan or consumer perspective, right? Which is some of the innovations on OTT and gaming that you see. So right. I'll try and capture both. I think when it comes to the player aspect of it, look, we've seen how commentary, broadcast, everything's evolved over the past 2 or 3 decades. From radio commentary to a good commentary panel on TV with good graphic overlays, trying to tell the story, minor nudges to try and make the fan more informed.
And yet there is Sanjay Manjrekar on TV. Yet.
He isn't on TV this
not anymore,
year, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a different story. There are a few others also over there who you might question.
Yeah.
But anyway, so look, I think the single-minded lens to look at it is how do you deliver the best possible broadcast experience without or best possible experience, right? Let me put it that way, without necessarily overloading overloading fans with information, right? Because otherwise you get into choice paralysis, and we also learned this the hard way. And it's the same when it comes to players as well, right? I think every player has a different way of looking at how his or her performance works. Like someone like a Virender Sehwag, I don't think would have ever believed in video analytics. He's like, I'll go there, I'll sing a song. In my first ball, I'll know whether I'm going to play well or no. right? Whereas someone like a Dravid would have looked at his footage, pored over hours and hours, seen how his stance was. And it's interesting you met Sanjay Manjrekar, because what I admire about the guy is his own humility and self-awareness to say the reason I didn't succeed was because I overanalyzed my own batting. I was worried whether when I played the forward defensive was my elbow at a 18-degree angle or not, right? And anybody who's a fan of sport, I'd recommend reading his autobiography. It's a very underrated book. It's definitely worth a read because there are some good anecdotes of Indian cricket in general over there as well.
I will check it out and give him the chance to change my mind.
You should, because it did change my mind after I read it.
I will.
The honesty with which he approached it. From what a friend gave a very good analogy. It's the poor man's open. It's like Andre Agassi's. So he's taken a self-deprecating look at himself that way. So I think, coming back to the point I was trying to make with when it comes to player performance analytics, I think stuff like that has different use cases in different scenarios, right? So if you're a part of a national team that's on the road playing cricket for 8-9 months, in a year, the amount you use it versus when you are in a part of an IPL franchise that's only together for 3 or 4 months, I think in the latter, it becomes much more important to understand how analytics can help you perform better. And that starts right at the auction process, right? And again, I'm no expert in this, but all I'd like to tell people who are watching the IPL now is take a look at how teams who traditionally have performed well or started well in the IPL and see where they are right now. And one of the things that was a big unknown from the from the auction to now, teams actually franchises build their teams for majority of their games being played, or half of the games being played on their home grounds.
Right.
That advantage has been completely wiped out.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is why Chennai, which is packed with spinners, is now at the bottom of the table. 4 matches in, which is unheard of. The last time there was an interesting tweet that came out the last time Chennai lost for 3 out of 4 games in the IPL. The first 3 out of 4 games in the IPL, Barack Obama was in his first presidency, right? So that tells you how analytics, over-dependence on analytics sometimes also can, throw the balance of a side off. So
right.
It's interesting to see that, right? So analytics helps you build the right team, and Moneyball, everyone's aware of. Rajasthan Royals epitomized it in the first season. They've been trying to epitomize it since then, but it's a combination of Moneyball to money power that gets a good team going.
Right.
And that's where analytics comes in, right? And I'll caveat that with, if anybody's looking to build, and a lot of people actually reach out to me saying, hey, I want to build a career in sports analytics. It's a very niche market, right? If you look at it, there are 8 IPL teams, and at best 3 or 4 national teams would want to work with well-paid cricket analysts or a video analyst or analytics team per se. So you're competing in a market where the demand is very low.
Right.
Right. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Why is that though? I mean, I think by now it's fairly well established, right? That and the impact of analytics on sports, and there's a incremental performance to be extracted from it. Is it that the cost of entry is so high, or is it there's just not enough awareness? I'm thinking, because this is not the only league that we play, right? IPL, there's the ISL, there's the I League, there's Ranji, there's so much, right? And so I just want to pick at that for a second and try and understand why it is so low.
So look, I think the point I was trying to make is the number of people required for those kind of roles are not as much as what you would require for other aspects of working in sport.
Right.
No team is going to carry an entourage of 10 analysts with them.
Right.
At best, you're going to have 2. Right now,
Sure.
They take the number of teams that you have, they take the number of leagues that you have, and at best, if you take a slightly more optimistic average of 3 analysts per team, you're looking at a market that requires 200 to 300 people, which probably is not, which is a part I was trying to come to about demand. And I think technology is really evolving over there, right? I think the play over there is in having the best performing algorithms to be able to tell you what will and will not work, right? And as long as you're on top of something like that, you stand a chance to be among those 250, 300 people who can work there. So I think that's from a analyst perspective and sports tech perspective. And again, and this is I'll flip it to another sport where you've done analytics, right? Where this is Kabaddi. In the Pro Kabaddi League, we built our own custom analytics. We've got data from the first season in terms of how players have performed, etc. But the challenge there is the coaches. They are seasoned veterans who played the sport for 30, 40 years, and the moment they see a geek with specs and a computer showing him, "Acha, ye aapko karna chahiye." His first question is, "Tune kabhi khela hai kya?" Like, do you even know what it is like to stand over there saying kabaddi, kabaddi non-stop, trying to be on your feet and think on your feet literally at the same time? It's good for you to come and show me a computer, but unless and until you've actually been there, I don't have that much time for you.
The Moneyball problem, kind of the Moneyball situation.
Yeah. So, but we've seen that changing over 2 or 3 years now, which is 6 years into the league, right? Where coaches are now starting slowly to see, value of an analyst being there and being able to call out the right footage at the right time and show that when this raider enters on the right of the court, there's a 95% chance that he is going for the guy at the back, right? Second from the right or third from the right. I think those are kind of things that help a coach also build team strategy. But I think the bottom line for me is it's a niche market to get into. I'm not in any way devaluing it. I'm saying purely from a career perspective, someone really wanted to go there, it's going to be a bit of a challenge. Right. I think the opportunity when it comes to tech on the other side is massive, right? And tech is all encompassing when you ask me, right? It's sports specific websites, mobile apps, games. And again, games is a very loosely used term, right? Because there are three distinct aspects to it. There is fantasy sport, there is e-sport, and there are casual games. And there's an opportunity to build a career in one of the three of them, right? And that opportunity is massive. So, and I think that's where tech can really help,
Are you guys building any games in that space? Are you building any games?
So we've actually built fantasy games. We continue to do so. We've got our own proprietary fantasy gaming engine. And to be honest, this is more for international players. So the official fantasy game for the FIFA World Cup 2018 Russia was built by us, the one that's played the world over. UEFA, Euros, Champions League, the fantasy games that have been being played since 2016 are also being built and managed by us. So that's something that we do. And again, fantasy also, if you drill down further, there are different aspects to it. Right? Absolutely. When fantasy started, it was classic fantasy, right? Where you need to be involved from the first day. You need to know what the players are. Yeah. You need to know what your substitution should be. There's a limited number of
conditions, performance, all of that. Yeah.
Exactly. Injury updates, etc. And now there's daily fantasy, and I think daily fantasy, and that is what Dream 11 is. Dream 11 is daily fantasy, right? They've identified that space in the market. And that's what is really appealing to Indian fans. I think that's the learning from the US as well, right? Where daily fantasy really saw it skyrocketing, because it didn't matter whether you were watching the league up until that point or no. You had as good a chance as anybody else on that day to earn bragging rights or make money.
Absolutely.
That's something that's made the fan experience really, really interesting and immersive. And there's research to show that increase in daily fantasy users correlates to increase in viewership as well.
Right.
So I think that's one way in which technology is also positively impacting sport.
It's almost the perfect play-along behavior, right? It's almost it's social. It's got stakes. It's got a story of its own.
Absolutely,
it's beautiful, man.
Absolutely, and then I think the fundamental thing that's changed from, say, even 7 years ago. I think when the IPL started in 2008. I don't think we ever watched a TV with any other device in our hand apart from the remote.
Right.
Now the fact is, you can't imagine a world where only watching TV when live sport is going on. Right? You have your mobile phone with you. You're either chatting on your WhatsApp groups. You want to post something funny on Twitter or something smart on any of the other social media platforms. You've got a live play along also going, which is what Hotstar's done, where you have you can predict what's going to happen the next ball, and then you have the opportunity to win vouchers in real time. I think that's going to be that's been the largest shift we've seen in fan behavior over the past 3 to 4 years. And that technology shift, that very basic small smartphone itself, is something that has completely changed the way sports fans are also used to consuming content, live sports content.
That's a great sort of primer and a great sort of view of what's going on, especially with OTT, man. I think I remember when Tap and Play came out, that was a revelation. I mean, for me to see, hey, this is just insane, man. You get someone, there are twin motivations that come in, right? There is the sort of traditional motivation, which is, hey, I'm a cricket fan. This is my cricket team. I'm here to watch the sport I love, etc., etc. And then there is the added sort of stacked motivation, which is my personal game that's going on, right? It's beautiful. I really think we've, as a sports loving culture, we're in for a very good time over the next few years, right? Obviously, it is getting expensive to be a sports fan. The other day, for the first time in my life, I paid for Woot. I felt a little insulted, a little dirty, but I now pay for Woot because I wanted to watch the EFL Cup match that United were playing. And with it becoming more expensive, it is also becoming more valuable, right?
Which is a very interesting point that you made, right? And I think this is something that comes out from trend I've been seeing in general in content consumption, where I think more and more people will be willing to pay for the content. This shift from AWOD to SWOD. I think at a macro level, we are still far away from that in India. But at least when it comes to live sport, based on the level of fandom, I think for you to have paid for Woot, you're probably not even a wallet, right? I put you higher at a collector, because paying for Woot itself is a collector's item to be.
Absolutely. And I mean, nothing against Woot. I might even watch Big Boss if I'm very depressed and I want to.
You should.
No, I should not, man. I will. Maybe I will. But what I was getting at is it's becoming very, very high value, right? The numbers are getting astronomical. They've been astronomical in Europe and the US for the past 10-15 years, but now the numbers here as well are touching some crazy peaks, right? And the big LinkedIn talking point, at least, has been that every third person has a LinkedIn status message talking about how Cred, Unacademy, Paytm, and what's the fourth one? Dream11, right? The four digital brands are now putting money. What's your take on that, man? Where are you seeing the general space of trend of sports sponsorships heading towards it? What's your experience in terms of the questions that are going into making some of these decisions?
So I'll take a step back before I answer that question. As someone who's been working in marketing for 8 to 10 years now, one of my passion projects is getting marketers to understand that if you want to build a brand, you need to look at sport as a medium. If you have a TV plan, print plan, radio plan, you can't look at sport as just one thing. Jahan maine paisa dal diya, mera logo banner pe dikh raha hai, and then I'm expecting stuff to come out of it, right? You consistently spend money on TV for decades. If you want to build your brand and achieve business goals through sport, you need to look at sport that way.
Hey, someone recording this? Someone record this? Oh, someone is recording. I'm joking. No, absolutely, man. Fully agree. I know exactly the sentiment you're coming from.
So I think that's the first and most critical part for anybody who's trying to be an evangelist of this industry, also to try and convince people. And then there are folks who are getting it. I think particularly to this question. Look, the IPL has always been a bit of an indicator of the categories that are doing well in our economy. Right? You start with 2008, real estate boom, DLF was there, right? And then you had for the first 8 to 10 years of the IPL, telecom companies are doing well. You had Vodafone was a part of it throughout. Automotive came in and out. You had Volkswagen one season, then Tata Motors have come in after that. And there'll always be these 2 or 3 sponsors who come in who are the flavor of that season, right? So 2010 was the handset manufacturer of that era. Right. Micromax, Kamal Catch, or Carbon Kamal Catch, Micromax or whatever, right? And then when the Chinese, phone makers came in, you had Vivo, IPL and Oppo sponsoring the cricket team. And I think the current sponsors are reflective of what the pandemic has done, right? You have an EdTech brand. You have a brand that's talking to the HNIs who are probably not that affected by the pandemic, the top 1%, if you may call them that. And then there's Dream11, right, where which is like we spoke about, is building the category itself. I won't be surprised if Dream11 becomes a Xerox or a Kodak. So you may have like 80 fantasy players currently, but I think whenever you talk about fantasy, people over here will always relate with Dream11. So I think it's indicative of the flavor of the economy and the flavor of the market. Right. And this is something that will continue, right? Whether they continue to be sustained sponsorships or no, look, I'm not a big believer in crystal ball gazing. I like to look at patterns from the past and see what we can learn from those. And I think that's the beauty of the IPL, right? No matter what look, in the middle of a pandemic where the economy has shrunk, the global economy is affected, IPL teams are going to end this year profitable, right? And all potential parties involved are going to be making money,
right?
Which is indicator of the stature of the property and what's actually been built, right? And whatever you may say about Lalit Modi, his vision which he sold to the team owners in 2007, 2008 was after 10 years is when you start making money. Be with me for the first 10 years. Look at the asset that you're building. Look at the brand that you're building. 10 years post, the latest is 10 years. Some teams started making money, 5th, 6th year in. But after 10 years, look at the amount of money you'll be making. And I think that's the vision that people need to get into sport with, right? I've seen a lot of people who operate their sports entities like a Wall Street quarter on quarter earnings analysis, right? Okay, I'm not making money this quarter, sell this off or fire the team or reduce costs, right? I think the unfortunate part is people who are not looking at it from a long-term perspective. And the other example there is the Pro Kabaddi League as well, right? And one of the other leagues I had an opportunity to be involved in from a ringside view was in the first season where we were working with a franchise at DDB Mudra, and we got an opportunity to be a part of all the franchise meetings, knowing how the league is being put together, and that I think the value of that education was probably twice of what I paid for my fees at Mica. But just the fact that 2 weeks before the first match was going to be played, everybody had written this off, right? They said that the Star CEO was going to lose his job for putting a bet behind this. Star came in and said, look, if there's no title sponsor, we are going to underwrite this. Whatever commitments have been made to all the franchisees from the central sponsorship pool, we'll make good for that, right? And Star was very clear, unless we get a certain value, we are not doing away with the title sponsorship.
Right.
And that's what Star did. For the first 3 years, it was Star Sports Pro Kabaddi. VO came in for 300 crores for 5 years.
Right.
Unheard of, unimaginable for a non-cricket sport, right?
Absolutely.
The point I'm trying to make is the entire piece in sport is it's a long-term play. And I'm not even saying 10, 15 years, right? I'm saying 3 years in the case of Kabaddi, 5 to 10 years in the case of cricket. I think people who come into sport need to come in with that mindset. So which is why if I were a CRED, I were an academy, or look, Dream 11 I think is a straightforward one. But I look at how can I build something that's beyond this IPL, right? And something that keeps me going throughout the year, which is able to help build my brand further and drive objectives, the objectives I'm setting out to do on a quarterly basis.
Well, it's very interesting for me. I think you hit it on the head about the whole seasonality of IPL sponsors and how it's a barometer for who's doing well. What's really interesting to me, and from a sort of semiotics perspective as well, is that, yeah, sure, Dream 11 is very, very endemic. It kind of makes sense to do it. Red as well. Sure, you can make a business case for it. I don't know how it makes sense to spend 100 crores for an HNI brand. But I don't know the math. So I'm not judging. I'm saying, hey, cool. Maybe you've done your maths. You know your shit.
I love their creative work, by the way. I think this the spots they've done with Anil Kapoor and gang. I actually like funny stuff like that.
I honestly think that the audio is really poorly produced, so it doesn't come through what's happening. And now obviously we've had multiple exposures because everybody is talking about it.
Correct.
But the first time I saw it, I was like, wait, what happened? And I'm a CRED user. I've been a CRED user for a year, value their service and everything. But I think the audio could have been better produced, to be very honest. Conceptually, it's nice.
So could it have been intentional? Is that a part of their plan? I don't know.
But it's quite. When you say it's not everyone gets it, you can get away with anything, right? So
correct.
You can just file that under you. Yeah. It's not for you. I was like, okay, cool.
But my favorite one was Bapida.
Bapida was damn fun, dude. Bapida was damn fun. Anil Kapoor was okay as well. Madhuri's was a little. It felt like, hey man, that's Madhuri Dixit. You know who you're talking to. Like you can't sit there and be like that to Madhuri Dixit. Man. Come on. But coming back to IPL sponsorship,
Micans have to analyze ads at the end of the day.
All the time. It's now my in my DNA now, I think. Yeah. But what I really find very unique about the two brands that I'll talk about, and their proposition and their reliance now on sports is Byju's with the Indian cricket team, and Unacademy with IPL. Now, here's the rub, right? Your studies brands, आप tuition class का brand हो या जो भी हो, whatever, you're that, and you're here, right? What is the message that you're sending? None of these guys have taken are here because they went to a Byju's class or an academy class, right? They're all here because they said no to those classes and they played the game. So what is the message here, and how is this supposed to be? Is it? I mean, this makes me wonder. And more to your point that you made earlier as well, that hey, is it going to be the biggest reach driver in the country? Absolutely, right? Is it good for your brands to do it simply because of that? Should there be more thought out ways of doing it? Like I love what Mondelez is doing with sport overall, right? I mean, we work with them in India, but globally as well. Doing some amazing, lovely, deep thought out stuff. And again, none of this changes the fact that hey, Mondelez is like not good for you because it's too sweet and all of that, right? But they do it in such a nice way. But this whole Byju's and Academy bit got thinking.
Yeah.
brand यहाँ पे क्या कर रहे हैं?
Exactly. Look, again, coming back to a classical marketing model, the IDA model. Right. Most of the brands who are there at the IPL are there for the first day, which is just awareness. People should know about me. And I think in my head, probably that's where Byju's and Academy come in with their cricket sponsorship. कि लोगों को पता होना चाहिए कि हम लोग हैं करके, right? It's like anybody who's grown up in Maharashtra and done their 10th standard in the early 2000s, you will know Chartered coaching classes for a reason, right? So this is that same equivalent, but paying probably 1,000 times more than what Chartered would have done for something like that.
Absolutely.
I think the interesting part is what you said, right? When you come on board as a sponsor, that's the beginning. That's not the end, right? Which is what are you doing to activate that sponsorship? And which is where I think the Mondelez examples make a lot of sense. And I think that's where you move from the awareness to the interest and desire, right? I don't think any sports marketer today can commit to getting to action on the back of all of these. But at least you're moving 2 steps closer to that, right?
Right.
And I think that's the key part for brands as well. To be honest, I haven't seen what Byju's and Unacademy would have done to activate that sponsorship. But like simple things like, okay, I'm going to teach you, learn basics of geometry with Virat Kohli.
Absolutely.
And put that on the Byju's app and get people to register on the back of that, right? I don't know whether they're doing it. If they are, it's great. But that's how I would
highly doubt it.
That's how I would see it, right? That's the only way to activate it. Otherwise, it makes no sense if you're
or even if you don't want to make it like talent led, like for example,
Correct.
right? If I can give you, for example, trigonometry cases that are all based in sports, I give you 100, like learning trigonometry through sport or whatever,
Correct.
something there.
Correct.
It just doesn't feel. It feels valuable because it's got a lot of money, but it doesn't feel important, right? Today, I mean, Byju's is just a replacement for Vivo. In that sense, or replacement for Oppo in that sense, right? But sure, I mean, that's just our take. Let me pivot this and ask you about the bio bubble. I mean, I'm sure you have a team there in the UAE. How's the bio bubble been? What's the sort of feedback you're getting from the team? What's the experience been like? Would love to know more about how that's going for you guys at Sportz Interactive.
So we have 10 guys in different bubbles. So again, when we say bio bubble, there are I think about 12 or 13 different bio bubbles as we speak in the UAE. One for each team. There's the BCCI central team, there's the umpires, there's a broadcast team, there's a separate bubble for each venue in terms of the operation staff. And when I say bio bubble for the team, we're talking about the folks who are in the hotel, the drivers that are driving them to the stadium and back, and the people who are serving them food in the venue as well, right? So that's the level of detailing they've kind of gone into for the bubble. And before I get into it, I think just full credit to the BCCI where it's due. The document that they put together for detailing on what the bio bubble is, what are the precautions you need to take, what are the mitigation policies, what are the mitigation protocols should someone test positive. I think that's extremely well thought through. And I think the BCCI had the benefit of looking at someone like an NBA, what they've done, what the Premier League has done, and also looking at what not to do from certain other leagues, right? In the US, who decided to have traveling caravans going everywhere instead of having people in just one place. So I think that's something that for people who are just watching the IPL saying, okay, great, it's back. There's a tremendous amount of time and effort. Like I really respect the team that would have put together the protocols for the bio bubble and is ensuring it's being implemented on a daily basis, right? What people may not know is the level of testing that's happening over there. I think every second or third day, a nasal swab is being inserted in everybody's nose. It doesn't matter whether you're Virat Kohli or the bus driver of Royal Challengers Bangalore. Everybody's the same over there, right? That's what the bio bubble has done. The entire isolation, quarantine for the first 6 days when you're there, nobody's allowed to step out of your room. Food is kept outside your door. They ring the bell. You're supposed to wait for 1 minute. After that, then go open the door, take your food in. That level of detailing is something that's fabulous. And so the way the bubbles operate also is they're paranoid about people from two different bubbles coming in close contact with each other. So if anybody's seen some of the training photos of people, of teams, everybody has this Bluetooth device, which is like a collar around them, with a central monitoring team that's looking at all the these tracking devices for all the teams. It does two things. One is to monitor so that you don't come in close contact with anybody from another bubble. And the second is if you test positive, that acts as a contact tracing mechanism to know who all you came in close touch with over the past 48 hours. And I think for the players, it's been a fabulous learning experience for them as well, right? If you watch the match, a bowler never gives his cap and goggles to the umpire anymore because the umpire is from a different bubble. So you'll see some other fielder wearing two caps and fielding. Saliva was not allowed on the ball. They had to get used to that. And as far as possible, they're celebrating with fist bumps and not necessarily giving high fives. But sometimes it's difficult in the emotion of the moment. The players end up doing that. But I think those are just things that people need to get used to for the next couple of years at least, right? Till there's actually a proper vaccine out with people with knowing what. Knowing by when everybody will actually be immunized. But this is something that players are not used to, and I don't know whether fans are aware of it as well. Right? Teams have done some behind-the-scenes stories on what it takes to live in a bubble, etc. It's not easy.
Right.
I think full credit to the players also to have stuck to something like this, because any breach of any bubble means you're back in quarantine for a week. It puts your team at risk. It puts your team at jeopardy. And this happened in the Bundesliga, where a player stepped out of his hotel to go and buy toothpaste from a supermarket across the street, and he couldn't be with the team for the next 10 days, right? It's simple stuff like that. But that's how critical the bio bubble is to ensure that you don't spread the virus, right? So the basics that we've been reading about coronavirus, which is combating coronavirus, which is testing and social distancing and contact tracing, all of that is being lived day in, day out by everyone in the bubble over there. And we've also, for our guys who are in different bubbles over there, had to constantly just check in with them, see how they're doing. Being in a bubble is very different from, traveling with the team otherwise, where you can walk in and out of anybody's room.
Right.
And at the same time, ensuring you don't do anything that even comes close to breaching the bio bubble, because at the end of the day, we are all backroom boys over there, right? The main guys are the players. The team needs to be doing well. You do anything that puts the players at risk, you're putting an entire team's IPL campaign at jeopardy. Right? So I think so the guys also over there need to being kept reminded of that what you're a part of is something extremely critical, and ensure that you're not doing anything to screw it up.
That's insane, man, and just reconfirms my faith in what we discussed earlier, that live sports is our number one priority. But that obviously, that comment takes nothing away from this kind of preparation that seems to have gone into pulling this off in another country in the middle of a pandemic. And so far, so good, right? I don't think we've had any major cases after the first initial couple that I think Suresh Raina came back, and that happened.
12 positive cases from... Yeah. The first ball of the IPL was bowled by someone who was a COVID survivor.
Yeah.
That Deepak Chahar bowled the first ball.
Oh, wow.
And he had tested positive after landing in UAE. He was in quarantine. He was in and treated for 12-13 days. And I think I thought it was pretty... It was a nice one.
Yeah, very poetic.
Very poetic, right?
Yeah, very nice. I did not know that, man. I don't follow the IPL with that much sort of detail. Although I do have extra time on my hands, so I've been watching every single match highlights at least.
Unfortunately, your team had a close shave yesterday. They almost won, but didn't.
Whose team?
Aren't you a KKR supporter?
I am KKR. Yes, I am indeed deeply KKR. No, but I didn't pay attention yesterday. I was focusing on like getting a bit of chess in the lockdown. But I will watch those highlights today. But they've been doing well, man. KKR, not bad.
Number 5 on the table, not bad.
But they were second for a while, no? For a while they were second. After 3 matches, they were second, whatever. I'm just happy to see CSK crash and burn, man, for a while. I mean, I know you're...
I'm a RCB fan.
You're RCB, no?
I'm cricket's equivalent of an Arsenal fan. Where every year I come back saying "Isale Kapna mein de."
This time they have that song as well, right? This time around, it's nice self-awareness there. But
it's 2021. RCB is on top of the table and CSK at the bottom, so you know how bad it is.
Crazy, man. CSK though, the other day, I mean, a lot of people tried to justify how Dhoni finished that match, and I was like, oh, they got so close. And I'm like, really? They got so close? That's what you're going for? They shouldn't have been in that position in the first place, man.
Yeah.
But it's good to have live sports back, man. It's not without reason that it is such an obsession, such a priority for us. My sort of last question to you is we already talked about this a little bit, but what has you excited about the future of the sports and the sports fan experience, right? Personally, and I mean, of course, as someone who works in the field, but personally as a fan, what's got you excited, looking forward to it, despite all the doom and gloom that's around us?
I think as a fan, the future looks extremely promising, right? And as someone who's followed the sport, the way I look at it is earlier you would struggle to even get a match ticket. And again, I'm talking as an Indian fan. Cricket obviously become the lead sport, but you would struggle to get a ticket. You needed to know someone who knew someone to get that free pass to go and watch a match in the stadium, and you were one of the privileged few to get it. But from there, and then again, when you go into the stadium, it's crowded. There are no marked seating. You're sitting on wooden benches in the heat. You're treated like cattle. If you need to go to the washroom, you wonder whether you should go or hold it in for 6 hours. You don't know when you're going to be able to drink water or get your next meal. From there to where we are now, I think the entire democratization of access, like I can go online and buy a ticket, to I can get a good experience in the stadium. 2 minutes away, I can go and buy a Pepsi or buy something to eat and come back. I think that itself is extremely heartening for me to have seen that journey. And then take it a step further, where I see now, a cricket World Cup happening in any country outside India is a tourism boom for them, because you're going to have these tens of thousands of people coming in from India on a regular basis, right? It happened in Australia in 2015. It happened in England in 2019. And to be a part of that and to see that is also something where Indian fans are also now being looked at as, hey, we want to have these guys over here, right? We're looking forward to getting them here. And a little bit of Deshbhakti over there, right? Yes, Indians are looking forward to us. But anyway, I think seeing that and being a part of that journey is something that's been extremely, extremely, heartening. And I think it can only get better from here, right? I think it's just what do we build on top? And there's so much to learn from the US and from Europe in terms of how fans are treated over there, how fans are valued over there, and this entire sport culture. And when we talk about sport, India doesn't have a sports culture. Again, we keep talking about we never win at Rio, we'll never win at this, but I try to give it a positive. I'd like to believe I'm a glass half full guy. I'd like to say, but hey, at least we're getting a fan culture going, right? We're getting people who value sport. We're getting people who are willing to put in time and money to go and watch sport, which probably wouldn't have been the case 2 decades ago. We may not have a gold medal, but you'll still have more people, if everything's fine in Tokyo, you'll have more people at Tokyo from India than you would have had at Rio, right? And for me, that's something about in India becoming slowly a sporting nation and the sporting culture coming. So I think that for me is something that's heartening, and that's something I look forward to. And we've covered a lot about the tech aspect of it anyway. How do we just get fans closer and closer to sport? The simplest way I'll see it is we've evolved from the autograph to the photograph, where you want a selfie now with your favorite player. An autograph is not as valuable. I'm curious to know what the next big thing is from there, from how will technology help?
Very interesting way of putting it, yeah.
So how do you bring fans even more closer to their players?
No, that's a very optimistic note. And I hope Piers Morgan listens to this podcast and gets his response for why we celebrate what we celebrate. I love it, dude. I love the fact that Indians celebrate every win as Indians, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, right? अगर मुझे पता चला तो I will celebrate it. अब मुझे पता नहीं चलता है वो बात अलग है. We won a gold medal somewhere in archery and I don't know it. That's a different problem. But I love it. I love the spirit that you talked about, that Indians have about sport. My last question, which is a sort of episode ender that I ask everyone. I'm especially excited to ask you this because I'm sure you have a couple of great recommendations for my audience, right? A piece of entertainment, could be a book, could be a movie, could be a game, could be whatever, but something that's made an impact, that stayed with you for a while. You can't say Sanjay Manjrekar's autobiography, that's not allowed. Although that's had an impact, I can tell, but go on.
I think the one book I would recommend, and again, this is not just cricket, but for anybody who is a fan of history, culture, Corner of a Foreign Field by Ramchandra Guha. It's a fabulous book on the history of cricket, and it maps it very well to the independence movement as well, and just how cricket was used as a tool to both bring together the country and at some level even divide the country, right? So I did not know until I read that book that the Pentangular was one of their entire, the part of the strategy of divide and rule, where you have the Hindus, Muslims, Parsis, Christians play against each other. That's one book I would recommend to anyone to read. And I think the other one I would recommend for sport in general across the globe is Spirit of the Game by Mihir Bose. Which is also a very interesting one, where he talks about the evolution of sport he starts off with rugby in Twickenham and comes up to Nelson Mandela and rugby and the Rugby World Cup over there and sport in South Africa in general. I think that's also a great book to, again, it's not hardcore sports, stats, sports, anecdotes, which you wouldn't get, but I think both of those are I'd recommend as good reads for anyone who wants to know about sport, but also map that back to stuff you would have heard of otherwise as well.
That's Corner of a Foreign Field by Ramchandra Guha and Spirit of the Game by Mihir Bose. Recommendations from lifelong sports fan Siddharth Raman. Siddharth, great to have you on the show. Always a pleasure and always so much to learn, both from how well you know your stuff and how passionate you are about it as well. Thank you so much for making time on this Sunday afternoon while we are recording this. I hope you had fun.
Thank you so much for having me. Totally enjoyed this. I just realized we've been talking for an hour and 15, and when we spoke last, we said it should be 45 minutes. So I'm sorry we went on to this.
I always aim for 45 because I know it always goes to an hour. But I think what's great is you don't realize that time is gone. So that, I'm sure, makes for a good conversation. If you thought this is a good conversation, listen to it and tell us on social. I am Ashcharya at Instagram, Twitter, and wherever else. And Sid is?
At Sid Raman on Instagram and Sid_Raman on Twitter.
Fantastic. That's it. That's the end of this episode. This is Vineet Kanabar saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Speaking of Instagram, Niharika Pandey joined Cyrus this week on Cyrus Says. Niharika is the strategic partner manager for Instagram India. Great conversation about the plans for Instagram in India. Karanjit Kaur joined the guys at Uncle Please Sit. Another really interesting conversation about the patriarchy. On Advertising is Dead, old friend Suchita Salwan showed up. Suchita is the founder of LBB. Great conversation she had with Varun. Definitely do check that out as well. Tanvi Lad, who is a nationally ranked badminton player, was on the Habit Code with Ashton Doctor. Great conversation. I would highly, highly recommend that. The Football Shitwall guys are back. They've been back for a few weeks, but definitely do check out their latest episode. Great conversation they had. On Aditi Surana's Absolutely Right, Manju Sara Rajan was the guest, and again, a great conversation was to be had over there. As always, great conversations all across the board. Check out some of the other stuff like Smile India, Know Your Kanun, and All Things Policy. All of them had fresh episodes this week, but with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Are you looking for India's most awesome cricket podcast? Are you now tired of listening to the same old guys drone on about cricket everywhere? Edges and Sledges is a weekly cricket podcast hosted by three fans of the game, Varun, DJ, and myself, Ashwin. It was established in early 2018, has over 60 episodes now, and is of course now proud to be on the IVM Podcast Network. Each week, we get together from 3 different time zones, the USA, the UK, and Singapore, and we talk about things from the world of cricket, with a focus on Indian cricket. We often interview special guests from all around the world, including former cricketers and cricket media personalities. So check out Edges and Sledges, the cricket podcast, now on the IVM Network.